There is a town in America where the school, the police station, the church, the grocery store, the post office, and most of the homes share a single address, one 14-story concrete tower standing alone between glaciers and the sea. To get there, you drive through a mountain, 2.5 miles of tunnel, the longest highway tunnel in North America, with one lane shared in turns by cars going in, cars going out, and freight trains. The direction flips roughly every half hour, and at night, the tunnel closes entirely, sealing the town off until morning. This is Whittier, Alaska, population, roughly 272. Winters here bury the streets in snow measured in meters, while winds off the ice fields arrive at hurricane strength, which is why, decades ago, this town made the strangest housing decision in America. It moved indoors. All of it. The question is what happens to 272 lives stacked into one building when the tunnel shuts and the storm sits down outside. Prince William Sound compensates the town for everything the weather takes. On the calm days, the water outside the harbour turns to green glass under hanging glaciers. Sea otters raft in the kelp with their forepaws folded like commuters. Salmon run the streams in season. And the fishing, for those who endure the winters, is the kind other Americans pay thousands to visit for a week. Residents measure their compensation in exactly those terms. The worst weather in the state, they concede, purchasing daily access to some of the most beautiful water on earth. The Sound also carries the town's darkest memory. In 1989, the Exxon Valdez ran aground not far from these waters, and Whittier lived the spill's aftermath, as ports across the Sound did. Boats, booms, and years of recovery. The fishermen's fierce protectiveness of these waters dates from watching them nearly die. Whittier occupies one of the most dramatic dead ends on the continent. It sits at the head of a fjord on Prince William Sound, about 60 miles from Anchorage, a strip of flat ground barely wide enough for a port, pinned between deep cold water and mountains that go up like walls. Glaciers hang in the passes above town, waterfalls thread down the rock faces all summer. The geography that isolates Whittier is the same geography that created it. The harbour is deep and, crucially, stays ice-free year-round. While the mountain wall does something meteorologically brutal, it wrings the sky dry. Storms off the Gulf of Alaska hit the peaks and dump their cargo here, making Whittier one of the snowiest inhabited places in the United States, with winter totals that would bury a one-story house. The same terrain funnels wind, gusts screaming down off the ice at highway speeds, strong enough that the tunnel itself was engineered for 150 mile-per-hour winds and 40 below zero. No sane real estate developer would ever have founded a town here. But the men who chose this spot in 1941 were not developers, and obscurity, foul weather, and a mountain wall were not drawbacks to them. They were exactly the point. One more chapter tested the town before the civilians inherited it. In March 1964, the Good Friday earthquake, the most powerful ever recorded in North America, struck Alaska, and the tsunami that followed hit Whittier's waterfront hard, killing more than a dozen people and wrecking the port facilities. The towers stood. The military era's brutalist engineering, built for war, had accidentally built for earthquakes. One more reason the survivors consolidated into the concrete that had proven it could hold. In 1941, with World War spreading, the US Army faced an Alaska problem. It needed a supply port that could not be easily found or bombed. Whittier was perfect. Ice-free water, near permanent cloud cover, and a mountain hiding it from the open sea. Engineers blasted rail tunnels through the rock by 1943, and the secret port went to work feeding troops and cargo into Alaska's defense. When the Cold War replaced the hot one, the Army decided to stay, and to house its garrison, it did something very 1950s, instead of building a town. It built towers. 2 concrete giants rose absurdly against the fjord. The Buckner Building, completed for over 1,200 people, with its own bowling alley, movie theatre, bakery and jail, was called a city under one roof. Beside it rose the Hodge Building, 14 stories of apartments and offices, finished in 1957. Then, around 1960, the army simply left. The strategic map had shifted, the garrison packed up. The Buckner building was abandoned where it stood, too massive to demolish, too remote to repurpose, and remains today one of America's great modern ruins, a hollow concrete skeleton, black windows staring at the harbour, slowly filling with ice and graffiti. But the Hodge building found a second life. The few hundred civilians who stayed, port workers, railroad families, fishermen, consolidated into the surviving tower, and in 1972 it was renamed Begich Towers and converted into a condominium. The military experiment became a civilian fact, a functioning American town, vertical, under one roof. Everyone else got a suburb, Whittier got an elevator, and daily life here has been quietly rewriting the meaning of town ever since. Consider the logistics that hide inside a normal week. The grocery store downstairs stocks essentials at end-of-the-road prices, so households run on strategy. The monthly Anchorage run, timed to the tunnel, planned like a small expedition, returns with coolers and flatbeds of supplies. And neighbours shop for each other's lists as a matter of course. The school, across its weatherproof tunnel, teaches every grade in classrooms where a dozen students may span 4 years. Education so individual that visiting teachers describe it as tutoring with a flag out front. Weather rules the calendar's fine print. On the worst winter days, wind at the harbour can knock an adult off balance. And the town simply roots itself indoors. The corridors become streets, the notice board becomes the town square, and children burn energy in the gym while the storm audits the windows. Cabin fever is managed communally. Potlucks surface midwinter with the regularity of medicine, and the first calm day after a blow sees half the building out on the waterfront, blinking like sailors after a long passage. Morning in Begich Towers works like no other morning in America. The commute is a hallway. The mayor may live 2 floors from the police chief, who lives above the harbour master, who lives down the corridor from the school teacher. On the first floors, the post office, the grocery and general store, the clinic, city offices, a church tucked into the tower. Children ride the elevator to a friend's apartment the way suburban kids bike across a subdivision. School is the one commute that leaves the building, through a tunnel. A pedestrian passage runs underground from the tower to the school next door, so that in January, when the wind is shrieking off the glaciers and the snow is horizontal, a 7-year-old can walk to class in sneakers, dry, and never touch the weather. The tunnel through the mountain sets the town's clock. Cars out on the hour, cars in on the half hour, trains threading between, and everyone in Whittier carries the schedule in their head, because a forgotten grocery run in Anchorage, 60 miles away, must end before the last opening. Miss it, and you sleep on the other side of the mountain. When the tunnel closes each night, Whittier becomes, functionally, an island. Summer flips the town inside out. Cruise ships and the Alaska Railroad pour day visitors onto the waterfront. Kayakers and glacier boats crowd the sound. The population multiplies by daylight and drains by evening. For a few loud months, the loneliest tower in America has lines for ice cream. Then September comes, the ships go, the rain returns, and the roughly 272 settle back into the corridors for the long indoor season. What outsiders assume is claustrophobia, residents tend to describe as something else: absolute security. Every neighbour is known. Children roam free inside a weatherproof world. No one is ever more than an elevator ride from help. It is small-town America compressed into a single load-bearing structure, with all the warmth and every ounce of the friction that compression implies. Even governance compresses gracefully. City council meets steps from every constituent. Complaints arrive over coffee rather than forms, and civic office rotates among neighbours who cannot hide from their own decisions in hallways they share with the electorate. Political scientists would call it radical accountability. Whittier calls it Tuesday, and notes, dryly, that potholes get fixed faster when the road commissioner lives above the harbour master and below the loudest complainer. The children raised this way carry a signature. Teachers who move on describe Whittier kids as unusually unafraid of adults and unusually good in weather, small boat competent, storm calm, at ease in any room because they grew up in one room with everyone. The tower, whatever else it is a machine for producing people who assume community is normal. Out in the wider world, its graduates keep discovering how rare that assumption is. The building has its own folklore, accumulated over 50 years of shared walls. Old-timers tell of hallway Halloweens where every door opens for the building's dozen children, trick-or-treating completed without a coat. Of the year the wind peeled roofing away and the repair crew was simply everyone. Of romances begun at the mailboxes and marriages conducted 3 floors from both families. The tower remembers its people the way small towns remember, but compressed, the walls have heard every era and the elevator has carried every generation's news up and down the same 14 stories. Live stacked with your entire town and privacy becomes a craft. Residents learn the building's rhythms, which hallway hour is quiet, whose door stands open when the laundry room becomes the news exchange. Gossip in a one-building town travels at the speed of the elevator, so does casserole when someone falls sick. The building teaches interdependence the way the sea teaches fishermen. The man who fixes the boiler is also the neighbour at the mailboxes. The police officer's kids are in the school tunnel with everyone else's. Feuds cannot fester into avoidance. There is nowhere to avoid anyone. People here describe a social skill the rest of the country is losing, the ability to disagree with someone on Tuesday and stand beside them at the harbour on Wednesday, because the alternative is no town at all. And through the windows, always, the view that explains why anyone stays, the fjord going silver under weather, sea otters in the harbour, whales in the sound in summer, and the Buckner ruin up the slope, a daily reminder that Whittier is the tower that survived. Ask residents why they remain, and the answers repeat like a chorus: the fishing, the quiet, the fact that a child can be free here in a way no city allows, and, said with a particular Alaskan shrug, because it is nobody's ordinary. But staying has a price, and honesty demands the tour go there too. The hard math first. Whittier's economy rests on the port, the railroad, fishing, and a summer of tourism that must fund a winter of maintenance. Jobs are few. Young people mostly leave for school and rarely move back. The school itself, the town's institutional heart, has counted enrolment in the dozens, and every family that departs is felt in the classroom immediately. The building, mighty as it is a 1950s military structure holding an entire municipality, plumbing, elevators, and concrete all aged together. And a major overhaul is not a renovation, it is civic survival. The abandoned Buckner next door looms as the cautionary alternative, what this place looks like when the maintenance stops. Isolation carries clinical weight at 60 degrees north, months of darkness and rain, the tunnel curfew, the sheer smallness of the social pool. Some residents thrive in the closeness, some winters test everyone. The town's answer is the same tool it uses for everything: proximity. In Whittier, nobody slips through cracks unseen, because there are no cracks wide enough to slip through. Fragile, aging, improbable, and yet still here, decade after decade, while grander Alaskan schemes rusted out. The fortress holds, which leaves only the question of what it actually proves. Consider, finally, the strange gift of the constraint. Every community on Earth negotiates the distance between neighbours, the fences, the commutes, the polite screens of suburban privacy. Whittier had that negotiation settled for it by a mountain, a tunnel, and a garrison's leftover tower. Distance was simply removed from the menu. What remained was the experiment nobody would volunteer for, and these few hundred people run daily, full proximity, no exits after the tunnel closes. Weather that makes cooperation compulsory. And the experiment keeps returning the same result. Visitors arrive expecting a curiosity and depart unsettled by a question. If one building at the end of the world can hold a school, a church, a government, and a functioning neighbourhood, what exactly are the rest of us doing with all our space? The tower does not answer. It just keeps its lights on, floor by floor, against the dark of the fjord. Looking back across the whole journey, Whittier stops reading like an oddity and starts reading like an experiment America ran by accident and forgot to end. Strip a town of everything optional. Take away the streets, the yards, the sprawl, the choice of never meeting your neighbours. Compress what remains: school, church, store, government, everyone, into 14 stories behind a mountain. Seal it nightly behind 2.5 miles of rock and see what survives. What survives, it turns out, is the town itself. The actual substance of it: mutual reliance, shared weather, children safe in hallways, the certainty that every face is known. Whittier lost every ornament of American town life and kept the entire engine. Whittier is not just the tower, the tunnel, the glaciers and the ghost building up the hill. It is a reminder that a town was never streets and rooftops. It is a group of people who have decided, against inconvenience and sometimes against sense, to stay within reach of each other. Even if that means sharing one roof at the end of the world.